Hello, brothers and sisters. Sorry about the noise in the background. My neighbor decided to do some chainsawing in the background right now at this moment. Um, Today, I want to do a little bit about my testimony. My name is Trey. I'm currently, at the time of the video, I'm 35 years old. I currently reside in Decatur, Illinois. I grew up in Tuscola, Illinois, which is about 40-minute drive from here. Um, I gave my life to the Lord in the year 2011, um, and I will just show you how during my testimony. As I wrote it out, it's a little lengthy, so stay with me here. I wrote it begins. My birth is nothing short of a miracle. Um, Not only for the simple fact that all life is precious and is a miracle in the eyes of God, but for the fact that I nearly died at the time of my birth. I've been told at my birth I breathed in early before exiting the womb, which means I breathed in amniotic fluid. I don't know if that is true or not. My parents told me that instead of crying, when I was born, I let out a whimper. My skin and eyes also became the color yellow. I was diagnosed with what is commonly known as jaundice. I was then rushed to a larger hospital in a bigger city that had a neonatal intensive care unit, or most people call it a NICU, an ICU, for the next 2 weeks. There I was in an incubator under lights. After those 2 weeks, the doctors allowed me to go home, but I was not completely whole. I still had a remnant of jaundice in my body and in my eyes. The jaundice had weakened one of my eyes, and it began to become cross and outward. So if you see my eye turn in any of my videos, then you will know why. Fortunately, my siblings had no such effects. I was blessed to be born into a Christian family, both with both a father and a mother. I was also blessed with two older siblings, which one brother and one sister. My father worked at the same company from the time I was born until the day of his death, shortly after I turned 17 years old in the car accident. My mother worked at different jobs, but she did stay home with us until we reached kindergarten. Then we were babysitters or whatever, my grandparents during the summer. Um, Many Sundays we would go to church, but there were also many Sundays that we stayed home. Of most of the time that we went was because of my grandmother, and it was because it's out of tradition. I'm not sure if any one of us had a true relationship with Jesus Christ. We definitely did not speak in tongues or prophesy. Our church was more religious, more the following of godliness, but denying the power thereof. There wasn't a move of the Spirit in that place that I was aware of, but it was pretty firm. I must say, it was pretty firm in the Word. I was in a religious church. I was in this kind of religious church. The infants are normally baptized, not really dedicated to the Lord, but that's what they mean. I'm guessing. So then they don't anoint. They wash their head with water, and they're not old enough to speak for themselves, so others speak for them, and that's not how it works. At the age of 15 or 16, I felt the call of God on my life, but I was unsure of what to do with it. I began to entertain and pursue the idea of going to school after high school to become a pastor in our denomination. Then one summer, I attended a 6-day event for future pastors at a nearby seminary, after which I had decided that being a pastor really wasn't for me. Today I see that wasn't the route the Lord wanted me to follow, and He has something better for me. I also see that I was doing it as a career and not at following my true calling. After the event, I began living like the world. I had already begun smoking cigarettes at a very young age. Then I began drinking at a young age. I hang out with friends, with older friends, who were able to get me alcohol and cigarettes, and got drunk. I was also exposed to pornography when I was a young teen. I did manage to graduate high school, and after that I had plans to go to college, not for ministry, but for auto mechanics. This, however, didn't last long, and I dropped out after a couple of weeks. I began working at local retail stores, but I quit those jobs after a while. After about 1 year after graduating high school, I met my first wife. I managed to this point to not have sexual relations with any other women until this point. However, due to pressure, my friends in this world, and I just pretty much gave up. I gave into temptation before we were married. So she moved in with me and my mother, because my father had already passed away at this point. She became pregnant with our first child. Within a few months, at this point we moved out and moved out with my mom, and then moved in with her father, and we got married at the county courthouse. My first wife was worldly like I was at the time. She drank, smoked cigarettes, and marijuana. I had tried marijuana a couple times. Didn't really like it. And she was into watching pornography. Our marriage started off with the lust of the flesh, and it was not a happy one. The alcohol and the marijuana did not end. She craved it. We partied. We drank often with her friends, with her siblings. We did not have jobs at the beginning, and we didn't have jobs at the time. Her older brother lived there as well, and he also drank alcohol until he was drunk. He also did other drugs, and he often came home drunk. We were drunk too. Now, I met my first wife on the internet through a friend. She lived almost an hour's drive from my city. When we moved in with her father, I was so far away from my family. My family couldn't hardly afford to visit because it was so far. At this point, I pretty much felt alone, even though I was with her. Living there, I had a few different jobs. I worked at a gas station, and then I worked for a garbage company for a few months. Then when that wasn't enough, I eventually joined the United States Army in 2006. This was just 1 month after my second daughter was born. I went to basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Many call it relaxing Jackson. Training was hard for me. This is not only because of the strenuous exercise and training, but it was also because of being so far away from my family and children. I got yelled at a lot because they didn't see I was trying, and I was very emotional. I completed basic training and transferred to AIT, which was Advanced Individual Training, and was basically a career training on the same base, so I didn't have to go very far. My wife, kids, and in-laws came for training, graduation, and family day. I got to stay with them in a hotel outside the barracks, but I was not able to leave the base. But I had other ideas. Here is where I left my training without permission, which everybody knows as AWOL, which is absent without leave. I returned home with my family, but since I was in hiding, then I could not work. So I wasn't providing for my family at this point. 2 months later, I was arrested and put into county jail. A few days later, which I think it was about 5, I was released with the conditions from the military that I get on the bus to go to Fort Knox, Kentucky, within a certain time period. I think they said 8 to 12 hours. So I immediately, with those orders, I took those orders, went to the bus station, and got on the bus to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, which was where the station was. There, I waited for the MPs a long time until they found out we were there, because there was one other guy there. When I arrived there, I spent about a week being processed from the military. We had the choice to go back to training, or to continue out processing. I, of course, chose to leave the Army because it really wasn't for me. I was told that normally the process would take 30 days to be out processed and then get your orders to go home. But if we had our family pick us up from there, then we could leave after all the paperwork had been done. My wife, kids, and father-in-law again came to get me. As soon as I got home, it was difficult to find work after leaving the military. And when we got home, it seemed like my wife and I's relationship grew worse. She acted as if she hated me. Rumors were shared that she cheated on me while I was in basic training. Then rumors say that she was seeing someone else later. We got separated and got back together a few times during our marriage, because love is blind, and people do stuff when they're young and immature. We were separated a few times before we finally got divorced. She had cheated on me, she admitted. I also cheated on her, basically out of anger and revenge, with one of my female friends. After the final separation, which is about 2007, I had lived with my mom and my brother, but I went back and forth. Because when we were together and apart, we moved back in with each other, and then we separated like 2 or 3 times. I had struggled to find a job. One, because due to the military, and plus because of due to my job history, because I didn't really keep one. When I was living with my mom, I had a couple jobs, but they didn't really last. I got let go, or I left one, which was at Dairy Queen, to go to a better paying job, but it was under contract, so the contract ran out, so I ran out of work. I also worked at seasonal help for a grain cooperative and it was just for seasonal, so it didn't last long. So after all those, I was jobless. I still lived with my mom, but then she met a man online, so she moved to Missouri to go live with him. So I was left in the place by myself. So I couldn't pay for rent, of course, so I went to go move in with my cousin. He lived in the country and had no car, so I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't get a job. If I did, I had to walk several miles. So this went on for a few months to a year or so. In this time period, I did leave for a month or so, because during this, like before my ex-wife left me, we had my neighbor. Anywho, we had intercourse, and she ended up getting pregnant. So, so I left my cousin's house to take care of my kids. my two older kids at the moment while she was on light duty and to help her out. Um, we thought about getting back together then, but we just finally decided against it. That was basically the last time we've seen each other before the divorce. Because I couldn't get a job with my cousin and do some frustration, some other drama at my cousin's, I moved in with my sister. I helped my brother-in-law with the paper route, so I got a little payment. I also was on unemployment, so and part of me, like, I might not be, like, my mind is kind of hazy because it's been so long that, I was like in, line of, or the time period of when things happen, so please forgive me. During this time, it was unfortunate that my grandmother had passed away, and because my grandmother passed away, I received part of my father's portion of the inheritance. I then bought myself a car, paid rent on a house for like a month or so, but I still didn't have a job. I went, like, money ran out, of course. I didn't pay rent. I didn't pay my utilities. So all the utilities ran out. They shut them off. But I was still managed to live there. Winter came. Food. It was so cold in the house. And it was drafty in the house that my refrigerator froze. My food in the refrigerator froze. My canned food froze. Thanks a lot for that to happen. And it seemed when I went to go visit my cousin, my pipe froze and busted, and water was all over my house, and the yard was flooded. I shut the water off myself without calling the city, so that was whether I was supposed to do that or not, I don't know. Also, the temperature was, like, one night it got to like the wind chill got to negative 22 degrees. So, it seemed like I was nearly froze to death. I managed to survive the winter by going to stay with friends and relatives. I got food from food banks and from relatives. I also took food from a dumpster at a local restaurant. Luckily, the food was still warm from the evening garbage dump. But even though I had been going through hard times, I still did not turn back into the Lord. See where my stubbornness is. I was penniless. I still had a craving for cigarettes, so I'd either bum them or I would pick up cigarette butts and smoke those, which is disgusting. I still went after the things of the flesh. I still committed sexual sin with other women, even though I wasn't divorced yet. I still looked at pornography when I had a chance. I dated women, and they tried to help, but they didn't want to stay with me. Because of my failed marriage and past relationships, I had trust issues. I always accused them of cheating and was always very jealous. I was eventually kicked out of that house. Luckily, it was summer when I moved out. I slept in my car for about a month when I found and started a new job and was able to afford a room in a boarding house. I lived there for a few years, but still dated and slept with women, so I was still in sin. Even though I was in sin, the Lord was still good to me. I was at my job for about a year before I met a woman and moved in with her. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with her, but I was still able to get back into the same boarding house. And I found a better job that paid more. I was able to replace my vehicle that I bought after it broke down. During this time, I finally divorced my first wife because she didn't send me the papers till later until she found out I had a job. Finally, even though I was still in sin, the Lord located me. He led me to be curious about where we were in the end times. I knew Jesus was coming, just from the word I learned during church when I was younger. I read the Bible when I was in high school, and especially during the time when I wanted to be a pastor in high school. I searched it on YouTube when I had a computer or a phone when I can do that on. And I found a pastor named Pastor/Evangelist by the name of Paul Begley from Lafayette, Indiana. He had a live broadcast on his website. He's still there today. PaulBegleyProphecy.com. He had a live broadcast the next Sunday. It was then I gave my heart to the Lord, and became saved by grace through faith in Christ Jesus. I surrendered to my Lord, but still was not perfect. I still followed the same path of flesh. However, I began to go back to church that I grew up in. I began to read my Bible again. I dusted it off. I eventually met my current wife on a dating site, Plenty of Fish, if you must know. And we knew from the beginning that it was God that put us together. We just had that feeling. She was born again before she met me. Our relationship wasn't without its problems, though. I still had trust issues from my previous relationships. We still had to deal with my ex-wife because she did not make it easy for us during visits and scheduling time with the kids. My wife hung on and stayed with me and helped me through it, and the Lord helped me to overcome and deliver me from my trust issues. A few months later, we were married. Her parents and her grandparents helped us to get a house and fix it up for our family. My wife had 2 children from a previous marriage who lived with us, and my children lived with their biological mother. During our time of dating, I met a few connections that would help us on our walk with God. One was a prophet, and he also was the one who performed our wedding ceremony. He directed me toward the path of the prophetic ministry. When we moved to our new home, we tried different churches. Then I learned that Pastor Paul Begley was going to be in a church in a town. At one church in town. Sorry about that. That night, I met Pastor Paul. Very nice guy. Very anointed man of God. I talked to the pastor of the church and began attending that church the next Sunday. We loved the people there. While we attended the church, I went to church and Bible study often. I was hungry for the word. Then one night at Bible study, I received a phone call from my brother, and later a message from my ex-wife's boyfriend, and learned that my ex-wife had passed away. So, because they were not married, then I had to get my children. So after the funeral, all my children came to live with me shortly before the holidays. And at this time, during the time of the funeral, like a week before, I told my wife and I gave up smoking. So this is a trial here. Very stressful, and probably needed a cigarette at that point, but we didn't do it. So after the funeral, all of my children came to live with me shortly before the holidays. My wife's family and my church family helped us and bought presents for our children. That year, our living room was full of presents on Christmas morning. From one end of the living room to the next. The Lord richly blessed us through them. Our new church, my wife and I received baptism of repentance with water. The same day, I was baptized in the Holy Ghost with evidence of speaking in tongues. It was just one word. We learned so much at that church. We could definitely feel the presence there. Sadly, it didn't last. A different spirit came upon our pastor, and he became controlling and pretty much manipulative. He would not listen to godly counsel, and people began to leave the church through many offenses by the pastor. Because he would not listen, my wife and I began searching for another church. We met some wonderful friends in the Lord, whom we love very much, on our journey. Today we are at a church where a good friend is a lead pastor. My wife helps with the nursery. I help with offering and communion. But I believe that soon the Lord will have me to begin training for my place in the church. Still, I'm hungry for the word. I'm still eager to go more in depth on the prophetic. And I'm praying that I soak up much of what Rick Pino, much of the knowledge that Rick Pino and Todd White had to pour out and impart into us during this intensive. I'm eager to know how to usher in the manifest presence and the glory of God, so that people are saved, healed, delivered, receive prophecy, receive impartation or activation in their gifts. I want to see signs, wonders, and miracles performed. It is my heart to see the ministry of Jesus continued on the earth. No, to me it doesn't seem like much for a testimony, but maybe many of you have gone through it. I mean, the Lord's still much work to do on me, so to add onto my testimony. Our life is a testimony. A prophetic lifestyle, so we're all being changed through the Spirit of the Lord. So I hope this has blessed you. Many blessings upon you, and have a wonderful day.